I'd like to thank the whole Creative Mornings family, Molly Benjamin, Gus, Dave, Catalina, for just making the whole process so painless and for their just tireless enthusiasm. Susan Lee Chun for making just these beautiful confections that we're all eating this morning. Mike Nash, the church of course, my amazing Royal contract family. In particular, I worked very hard with Christina Bishop on this. It's really wonderful. Yeah, so the way that this works, is they give you a topic, and basically in all the different cities that participate in the Creative Mornings process, you're given this word and you have to sort of make a talk about it. And it's sort of an open-ended thing, so you can kind of do anything with it. And the word for today is freedom. I'm sure you're all aware of that, right? Freedom can be a lot of things, I think, for a lot of people. It, as a noun or even as a pronoun, it requires a state of restriction as a prerequisite. Otherwise, it's a superfluous concept. And I think the way that I wanted to handle this talk today was in the sense that the way that I experience freedom personally. I wanted to talk about my personal concept of freedom and how I apply it. Also, what I think it requires in terms of my effort in order to practice it. I made flashbacks. So what are the types of freedom, I think, that people typically think of? There's political freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, choice, association. And the different types of freedoms imply different possible restrictions. And by restrictions, I mean, freedom wouldn't be a valid concept if there wasn't something in place that prevents you from doing what you want to do. Whether that's a situational thing, a personal thing, emotional thing, perhaps a spiritual thing. And recognizing what those things are and how people experience them differently and process them differently kind of helps you define where it is that you are on the spectrum of how much freedom you have and what you're willing to do with it. I wanted to start off by saying for this that I'm a stealth human. I don't fly under the radar, I fly right through it like I own place. And which, if you know how stealth technology works, it avoids being picked up by radar by using electrical engineering design as opposed to aeronautical engineering design. And what I think is important about that, how that applies to me, is that in order to accomplish my goals, I try to do things differently. I try to sort of approach problem solving as a creative issue, which is, I think, entirely appropriate for me in my chosen vocation, as well as the lifestyle that I like to live. So for me, freedom is a conscious and deliberate and a creative choice. If I'm presented with this kind of problem where I'm not able to do something, for instance, if I'm given a challenge, whether that's a professional challenge or a personal challenge, I approach it with the attitude that I can do it no matter what, which is freedom. That's what freedom is to me. I think where a lot of people would find something to be impossible or prohibitively difficult, I approach everything with the attitude that I can do it, and then I do it. And that should be impossible. You develop the confidence, I think, to repeat the process in a different light. You know, so if you do one impossible thing, you're better prepared to handle and take on the next impossible thing. And I'll give examples of that as I go along. But I just wanted to establish the concept that even if something is impossible, it's not really impossible. You really can't do it. So as far as decision making goes, and I'll get more into that in a second, I know in advance what my sacrifices are, and I establish a goal. And for me, this is really, really important. I'll give you examples of what that is for me. Sacrifices for me include not sleeping as much as I should, maybe drinking too much coffee. Like, I tell myself I need cigarettes. But I make a lot of sacrifices in order to pursue the things that are the most important to me. And they're important to me because of my conscience. I have a conscience, and I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't do the things that I really need to do. You know, like, my fantasy life is very pedestrian. You know, I want a white picket fence, a dog, AK-47. Things that and a 9 to 5. And a 9 to 5. I don't want to live by my wits. I don't want to take risks. I'm human in a lot of ways, and in my tastes especially. I don't watch TV. I haven't watched TV in like 20 years. I don't own a computer. I'm like a Unabomber, actually. It's because I think what's important to me is pursuing the things that really matter, and to that end, I work all the time on the things that I wish to see completed before I can do it. So what freedom is to me is like existential decision making also. I approach it like a business. I approach it with the idea that I would like to maximize efficiency. And I think working in a creative profession, like there's not a whole lot of certainty in terms of where you're going to wind up, what you're going to have in terms of your resources. And relying on things to just happen or waiting for conditions to be perfect will never start. And I force it all the time. It's not something I advocate, but like it's something I do. So with a great deal of success. Understanding the scaling and the complexity of the project is I think really important. I don't think that reality is subjective. I think people's experiences are subjective. I think people's experiences with freedom are subjective. But I don't think reality is subjective. I think we all live in the same reality. And I think that to wax poetic about it is sort of the luxury of people who don't ever have to confront it. And I like conflict. I like confronting my reality and addressing it. When I'm made aware of what it is that I'm doing wrong, I try to address it and I try to work on it immediately. And risk and consequences. Taking risks is, I think, the most beautiful thing that I do. I risk everything with everything that I do every single time I do anything, which is like, it may not sound all that specific, because it isn't. It's more of an unconscious decision to try new things and be vulnerable. I don't want to play it safe in this life. I don't see the point of doing that. And I feel like I have a reason to perceive that taking big risks has big payoffs. And I'll be specific. That bottle of wine. The risks that I take are absolute. I risk all my money, my sanity, my sleep, freedom, my ability to keep producing on a daily basis. And I do that because I feel like the payoffs are worth it. And in terms of scaling and complexity, I'm willing to spend years on a single project without the guarantee that it's going to pay off financially or emotionally or personally in any way. I'm willing to try to find out though by going ahead and doing it. And I'll give you examples of that in a second. So, you guys have undoubtedly noticed that I see that most of you are wearing them. These little cards, right? And the way that these icebreakers work is that Malik asked me and said that it's a CreativeMornings tradition to go ahead and have the artists write down CreativeMornings tradition to have people who are speaking come up with an icebreaker slogan. And I thought that we could be pretty real this morning and come up with our fears. I think that for me personally, the biggest thing that stands in the way of my freedom is my fear. And I'll tell you what those fears are. It's what restricts me from my free movement. I fear that what I wrote here is not being good enough, for instance. I fear that I'll work on a project and that I won't do it to a level of detail or competency that reflects my best work, or that I'm somehow so flawed as a person that it's almost impossible for me to ever do the right thing or something. And in my experience, that certainty is largely incorrect. I've found that when I went ahead and did the thing that I was most afraid of, that I managed to do it okay anyways. And usually better than okay. I managed to do it great. And so once again, with the experience of having tried, I found that I was wrong about myself, and I was able to move forward. I think that over the course of time, I've learned to take direction and work well with others. Personnel and chain of command, when you're working on a larger scale, is really important to establish. It's important to establish a healthy working relationship with others. I don't exist in a vacuum. Apparently none of you do either. And the ability to play well with others, I think, is incredibly important. I don't think that freedom is something that you keep to yourself. I think it's something that we share as people. I think that if you're able to, in part, lead by example and also play your position, that you're able to have a greater quality of life. And I do think it's a quality of life issue, more than just a sort of standalone or dry, arbitrary concept. So in the pursuit of this, how do you define success? Success also is a very personal thing. Like, for me, it's usually very simple, or it will start off from a simple place, and as I build a foundation of success in my different projects, I can kind of expand the scope of where I think I'm headed with it. But initially, I think from like a fresh starting point, a lot of times I'll just sort of define my success as having done my best job and not being too much of a pain to others, basically, in the process. Over the course of time, my goals have stretched, and I like to make medium-term and long-term goals. But like I said, I approach freedom as sort of a process in flux, and I approach it as a business. I don't think that if to have like a kind of like ethereal, poetic concept of it is really nice and very heartwarming. But in order to practice it, to have, for me, real freedom as a working artist, I need to be really specific about what my goals are and what my end objectives are. And so I think about the things about myself that are that way, that are sort of undefined, and I try to pin them down a little bit better and then confront them and improve myself. That's real freedom, is growing as a person, I think. The this is a belt-fed AR-10, and as I put it together, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it conceptually and what I was hoping to achieve. When I'm working with material like this, for instance, and at the moment I'm building an airplane. It's a life-size MiG-21. It's 55 feet long. It's got all those internal working components, and it's sort of one of those impossible projects where, like, maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I first thought of it, I was like, well, I know I can do it, like from a technical perspective. I know I'm capable of doing it, but I had kind of like fear that it would never happen. As we all sit and stand here today, I am working on it, and it is going to happen. And I may not have the best definition of freedom, but I know that I have it. And I think that everything about my life feels like I have it, and it's really beautiful. So when I go about working on a project such as this, if you'll notice the face actually rotates. When I start a project, even like this one that I'm doing right now, there's some doubt that can I actually do this, and will it work, and will it be what I want it to be? And rather than question it too much, and find reasons for why I shouldn't pursue it, I just go ahead and do it anyways. And freedom is like that. For most of my life, as I made things, people would always question why I was doing it. Like, there wasn't really necessarily an obvious financial reason. Well, I shouldn't say there wasn't maybe. There definitely was an obvious financial reason. And there probably wasn't the best defined conceptual basis either. And for that matter, this is all made out of cardboard. In the end, in order to be able to live with myself, I stopped really listening to people who had something negative to say. It doesn't stop them from saying it, but I did stop listening to it. I have a 30-year experience in this life making things, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. Over the years, I haven't let myself get pinned down to do very much, for very long. I was a welder for about 20 years, starting when I was about 14 years old. I would go to the junkyard around South River Drive, and I apprenticed myself to a welding shop. This crazy old man. And I would take the bus and the train and get over there, and I started welding. And I moved away when I was very young to go work at foundries up north. I wanted to take more of the move that all in. Then eventually I started making neon signs in the late 1990s, and I started an electronics company in 2002, building and designing analog synthesizers. And I taught for a while back in the 90s as well, and just worn so many hats over the years. And over the years, I ended up being good at a lot of those things too, and I incorporate almost everything from those different things into what I do now. And without limitation, I think that that experience informs and enriches what I do and makes it beautiful. And now I'm working as a professional visual artist, which is it's as fun a job as it sounds like. And there hasn't been much lately in terms of things getting in my way and preventing that from being as beautiful as it could be. I wanted to say one last thing. think social mores, cultural norms, and common sense should be ignored at all times. Once again, these things, I didn't say it before, but when we're talking about the definition of freedom, different people will have very specific and heartfelt kind of understandings of that word. I'm not a political scientist. I think that other people are perhaps better qualified to talk about the politics or the religion or sexual issues or whatever. My experience is what I've told you about, and I try to focus on what it is that's important to me to maximize my efficiency and potential as a person. But allowing your concept of yourself to be kind of defined by the tastes of others, I think is a very dangerous place. And although it's useful, I didn't sign any social contract. Anyhow, thanks for having me here, guys, and I appreciate it.